So do you think that the Trump death cult pastors and priests and politicians are going to get away with this lie? I think it's really important that we constantly remind ourselves where this all started. Back in March, April, and May of last year, Donald Trump was looking at an election coming in November and knew, as every politician knows, as every president of the United States since Thomas Jefferson has known, when the economy falls off the edge of the cliff, the party in power loses. And Donald Trump wanted to get reelected in 2000. He wanted to get legitimately reelected. And actually, had he been able to hold the economy together and had there not been a pandemic, he probably could have pulled it off. Which is one of the things that makes me wonder if the pandemic was like divinely inspired. Well, let's not go down that road. But anyway, he probably could have pulled it off. But instead, he got the pandemic, and the pandemic slowed down the economy, and the economy slowing down caused the Republicans to lose the House, the Senate, and the White House. But Trump didn't want it to go that way. Trump really apparently believed that, this is a guy who spent his entire life BSing people. He lies people into buying condos. We've got, Ivanka and Don Jr., or no, Kusei, Eric, teeth on camera. They've been charged with this, right? People have sued them for lying to them about the occupancy rates and things of Trump Soho, I think it was. So, throughout his life, Donald Trump has been able to basically create false realities and be such a convincing salesman. He's like the Music Man, only without a heart. In the end, in that movie, the Music Man, the guy who is a hustling con artist turns into having a heart of gold. Well, that's not quite how the Trump story ends. But anyhow, Trump wanted to get reelected. He didn't want the economy to go in the toilet. And so he figured that if he could just get people to ignore the fact that there was a deadly pandemic happening and continue on with their lives as normal, keep going to the store, keep going to work. Yes, some of them are going to get sick. But only 1 or 2% were dying, maybe 3% at the most. That's not that many, and only maybe 10% of them were seriously disabled for the rest of their lives, probably. So, get everybody else back to work. That was Trump's strategy back in April, May, June, July, August, September, October, leading up to the election in November. Well, Trump lost the election. And you would think that after Trump lost the election, that the Republicans and the preachers and the Trump humpers and the maggots, that all these people would say, okay, Trump lost the election. We can stop trying to convince people that there's no such thing as a COVID pandemic. We can stop trying to convince people that, if you just stick an ultraviolet light bulb up your backside, that it's going to cure you, or if you drink some bleach, or if you take some, horse deworming drugs or an anti-malaria drug, that everything will be fine. We can stop that. We can go back to actual science. Keep in mind, these Trump humpers are people who, if they had a headache, they would take an aspirin or an ibuprofen. Even more modern. It's not like they don't believe in science. They get in a car, they turn the key, they expect the car to work. That's science. It's electronics, it's the physics of internal combustion engines. They walk into their house in the winter, they turn the heat up, they expect it to work. They believe in science. They're not complete idiots. Which raises this really interesting question. Why is it that after Trump lost the election, that the people who were following him, the Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, who now has the worst, particularly the counties where the Sturgis rally happened, has the worst increase in COVID sickness and hospitalization and deaths in the country. Why Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott, and what's his name down in Mississippi, why they don't just say, okay, let's get vaccinated. I mean, a few of them are. Kay Ivey, I think she's Alabama, came out and said, you know, it's the unvaccinated people who are causing this problem. Now, she's shut up since she said that. She got in a lot of trouble from the right. So why is it that they're still going along with this? I would posit, and I ask you this as a question, you know, do you think that I'm right about this? I think I am. I believe I am. In fact, it would probably make a great op-ed. I think what we're looking at is pure tribalism. People during that period of time who had bought into the Republican shtick, you know, the Republican Party, as we were talking about earlier in the program. The Republican Party made the decision in 1980 to become exclusively the party of very rich people and very large corporations. But you can't win elections like that. So they built this coalition. They brought in the people who are, you know, who hate the white people who hate people who aren't white. They brought in the straight people who hate people who aren't straight or fear them. They brought in the men who are concerned that their equipment isn't large enough, and so, you know, cling to their guns like, you know, their prosthetic penises. They brought them in. They brought in the people who believe that Jesus is going to return to America, to the world any day now. And by the way, he's a good white Christian. He wasn't actually a Jew. He didn't actually have dark skin. He's got blonde hair and blue eyes, don't you know? Or at least brown hair and blue eyes. They brought all, and all of the hustlers on their behalf. They brought all these people together and said, okay, you're all Republicans now. And by the way, we've got some weird beliefs like, you know, we're going to pretend that this pandemic isn't actually happening because we want to try and get our guy reelected. But after he lost the election, you know, the people are still following all this other stuff. You know, they're still, yeah, Republican, it means NASCAR. I mean, it doesn't, obviously, but, you know, it's their brand, right? Confederate flags, that's us. Monuments, we want monuments. I get all that. That's identity politics. That's tribalism. But what tribe goes around saying, yes, and we want to embrace a deadly disease? The only possible answer I can come up with is that these people are so invested in being members of this, basically, I think you could call it the haters tribe or the fearers tribe, the fearful tribe. Authoritarians, we know, are more motivated, authoritarian followers, about 20% of the American population, more motivated by fear than anything else. Fear of other, fear of immigrants, apparently not fear of disease. Or maybe it's fear of vaccines. Maybe what they have succeeded in doing is making these people more afraid of the vaccine than they are of the virus. Or more afraid of the mask than they are of the virus. Really, though, what I think it is that they're afraid of being tossed out of the club. They're afraid of no longer being part of the tribe. And thus you get like this priest, Father Michael Panicali, in Brooklyn. My brothers and sisters, you are, this is a verbatim quote, you are under absolutely no obligation to take a vaccine that is made, produced, manufactured, tested, even in the most remote ways with aborted fetal cells. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Be very careful about this vaccine. I mean, he's saying this to his parishioners, right? Be very careful about this vaccine. If I were you, I would not touch it with a 10-foot pole. I will never, because it leads to complications. Right. And this guy's still preaching. He's a Catholic priest in Brooklyn. Why would he do this? Why would he cause his own people to die? And our Republican, again, I'm not asking that entirely rhetorically. I believe that the reason why is because he wants to maintain his membership in the tribe, in the club. Now, we'll see what the limits of this are. Ron DeSantis is now starting to fail in the polls in Florida. Quinnipiac University just did a whole series of new polls in Florida over the last week. And what they found is that 60% of Floridians want their kids in school to be wearing masks. 60%. 61 to 33%. Floridians said this recent spike in COVID in Florida was preventable. Well, if it was preventable, why didn't it get prevented? Because of DeSantis. 73% of Floridians see it as a serious problem. 59% say that the pandemic spread is out of control in Florida. 68% say local officials should have the power to require masks. 69% say it's a bad idea to withhold pay for school officials who refuse to mandate masks. Or who try to mandate masks. 59% say everyone should wear a mask indoors in all public spaces. 63% say masking is a primary public health issue. DeSantis is underwater. Now, we haven't seen similar polling on Kristi Noem, who just poisoned South Dakota and is leading to hundreds of deaths there. We haven't seen similar numbers on Greg Abbott, who has been poisoning Texas and is causing hundreds of deaths there. We haven't seen similar numbers on Tate Reeves in Mississippi, if I'm remembering his name correctly, or any of these other Republican governors who are all outspoken about this kind of stuff. These are the high-profile ones. But how much longer are Americans going to buy this stuff? How much longer is the Republican Party going to be able to maintain as part of their identity, not just the flag and NASCAR and country music, but we like disease. We like the COVID virus. Take some horse deworming paste. That'll cure you. How long can they pull this thing off? We've got about 1,000 Americans a day dying right now. We haven't seen these kind of numbers since last year.